Well, hello and welcome to another video. This one's a bit different. It's another interview that I have done. This guy's incredible, Rusty. I implore you to watch all of this. It's long, but it's incredible. He's a wonderful human being. There's loads of details to go into it. I'm going to drop everything into the top comment and the description, so you've got links to what he's doing, where he's going, and his itinerary. Enjoy. It's a good one.
So, right, we'll kick this thing off properly now. So, introduce yourself.
Okay, hi, I'm Russell, but also known as Rusty. I own a small part-time bike shop based in Basingstoke off the M4 corridor, and I'm ex-forces by trade. So I spent about 15 years or so buzzing around and keeping people up all night in helicopters.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm one of those annoying people that you hear with the chukkas in the Chinooks around the Hampshire Surrey area. So that was about 15 years worth as an operations officer. I left about 5 years ago, and I never wanted to work for the defence community again because I had a bit of a terrible time, if I'm honest, when I left the forces, and I kind of left through a few kind of mental health situations. So I was kind of deployed at short notice to Africa for about just over a 6-month period whilst my wife was heavily pregnant. And a bit of background, so I grew up abroad in the south of France, which gave me kind of the lingo, and it was very, very good, but it enabled me to be deployed at some hot and dusty places all over the world for about 15 years.
So that'll be something like the west parts of Africa, where the more French-speaking side, was it?
Exactly, yeah. So some of their first languages is a kind of a dialect of French or kind of a broken English, but yeah, it was a benefit to the armed forces. So don't get me wrong, it was a brilliant job. But after 15 years, I was in Africa, and we lost a couple of guys at the same time. And we thought, right, I tell you what, it's time for a change. I had two little kids at home waiting for me, so it was time to change. I left, and I joined the defence community, and pretty much been there ever since. But the whole kind of aspect of our small little workshop is that we got to a point, I think it was in March 20, when it first started, and my wife was still kicking about with the military. She still is, but we realised, because I used to do a lot of kind of cycling and triathlon stuff and mechanics in the Air Force, is that there was a kind of not many people, certainly in our area of the country, that was able to kind of dust off their bike and then jump on the bike and then do something productive, or fix somebody or for a kiddie's bike. So my wife, unbeknown to me, decided to take a photo of me at about 11:30 at night whilst I was spannering away on my road bike. And she came up to me the following day and said, "Wouldn't it be absolutely brilliant if we could support the local community somehow? Maybe, you could start servicing some bikes." And my thought process was, look, in all honesty, sweetheart, this is I'm probably a bit old in the tooth here, but nobody's going to be interested in somebody who's washed out in the military and found a job in Civvy Street, and I'm just quite happy to plod on my own bike. Little did I know that my wife had kind of hatched a plan with one of my kind of concept designers and graphic designers, and designed the logo and then designed a Facebook page unbeknown to me. And then within literally a matter of days, it kind of exploded. And we've been going strong for about a good 2 years now. We honestly thought that as soon as the pandemic hit or the boom was over and bikes were fixed, that everything would just stop and I could go back to a normal job. And it just hasn't really been the case, if I'm honest. It's been absolutely manic.
No, the whole cycling community is it's grown exponentially over the last 2 years.
It is, yeah. In terms of anything from parts to servicing, I think, don't get me wrong, you're a mechanic because you love the trade. You're never going to be a millionaire, but it's the variety of bikes and more importantly people. And I think that's the kind of thing that I missed when the kind of camaraderie that you get from the military perspective. What we wanted to do, because it's only me that spanned this, is I wanted to kind of bring that whole kind of military approach to a cycling community. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not a technical person, certainly for cars, but I love everything bike, and I wanted to kind of make sure that that message was passed on to the people that were coming into our workshop. And I often kind of think about, if you go and MOT your car, or you go and get something fixed or breaks or something, you literally turn up, you drop your bike off, or you drop your car off, and then you get a phone call by the receptionist. You go, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. Here's the price. This is what we've changed out. And you come back into the reception area, you pick up your keys, and you walk out, and you're probably about £200-300 lighter. And I started to think, am I the only one that doesn't really know what's actually physically being done to my car to make it safe to ride?
Yeah.
So we wanted to do something completely different, and we wanted to focus on the customer first and foremost. And we thought, well, why can't we do, you go to the specialist dealerships like Ferrari and Mercedes-Benz and everybody else, and everybody does this kind of customer first approach. And we thought, well, why don't people do it for bikes? So let's do that. And we tried to band around ideas of what was in the art of the possible. And we thought, right, well, every single bike that comes in, we're going to treat it as if it was our own bike. Every single bike that comes through the door, I'm going to give the customer a video diagnosis. Every single bike that comes through the door, I'm going to give them a breakdown, blow for blow, what I physically would like to do to the bike versus recommendations, and then leave the option of what they want to do to their bike to the customer. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you're really enthusiastic about fixing a bike, you'll go on GCN, you'll go on YouTube, you'll start Googling, and you'll buy a few tools. Whereas there are some people who have really expensive bikes, like I think we had a Trek top spec come in the other day. It was like 12,500.
Wow.
But but he didn't want to touch the bike. He was like, I love riding it, but I don't want to touch it with a tool.
Yeah, he doesn't want to be responsible for breaking his own stuff, and he can blame. Yeah, give it to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Exactly. So we started doing this approach, and then suddenly it grew and grew and grew, and we then started doing BMXs and small kiddies and bike builds and custom bike builds and triathlon bikes and commuter bikes, and then doing kind of people would come in with their bikes from the late 80s and the early 90s, the steel bikes, and they'd have their custom paint jobs. And they said, we've heard you can build this, can you do me a customer first approach and tell me how you would go about and doing that grade? And we didn't really think that we were going to be anywhere near where we are at the moment. And I still run a full-time job. I still work for the defence community, trying to give something back to the veteran community. And then of an evening, I generally sit in the garage and a spanner. As we started going through the pandemic, certainly over the busier months from like the March time all the way through to September, we realised that we had a bit of flex and we wanted to do something else. So my wife serves as an HR officer. I used to fly and annoy people in the back of a helicopter. I kind of exited through mental health, so the likes of anxiety, depression, PTSD. And I thought I can't be the only one. So what we wanted to do was go the extra mile. So although I'm a one-man band and my wife does the accounts, we wanted to find something that enabled us to not only connect to the local community, but and our purpose wasn't to bring our name out there, but to more importantly give veterans like myself and people who have a vested interest in what the forces do is a kind of an insight to not necessarily all the good points, because the military has its pros but also its cons, and there are still people that suffer from the conflicts that they've gone to, and I'm case in point, and I've come out the other end, but I've come out the other end on the basis that the pathway that's taken me where I am at the moment is because of organisations such as the Royal British Legion, Poppy's Appeals, and combat stress. So what we started thinking is people like to cycle, people like to do crazy, stupid, silly things on bikes, and that's anywhere from Zwifting, anywhere from being on a bike for a prolonged period of time, anywhere from doing mammoth events from going point A to point B. And we thought, well, why don't we, instead of designating our kind of awareness to one group, let's change it up. Every single year, let's focus on a charity that doesn't necessarily get the attention that it deserves. So the likes of Help for Heroes is obviously been in the news, certainly of late, that think the Sun newspaper reported something along the lines of there was, you know, umpteen millions of pounds that was paid in tax. The same, instead of having that money transferred to the veteran network where it needed, and there was kind of a bit of a grey area of how that money was being distributed. So yeah, let's forget about those areas. Let's focus on the smaller companies that don't really get the traction they needed. So last year we started, and it was the first time we did it, and we did the Royal British Legion, so a mammoth organisation, lots of support, both public and independent donations from private investors. But we wanted to do London to Paris. So I obviously grew up in France, but I wanted to do something for the RBL to give something back to the Poppy Appeal, because they had helped me originally when I kind of transitioned. So we set about doing the London to Paris, which is I think some 500 kilometers in the space of about 2 or 3 days. And it was very well supported. You can imagine an organisation that's thousands upon thousands of members strong. You know, there's tea, there's coffee, there's juice, there's stop breaks, there's support wagons, there's mechanics.
Well, you'd call it military precision, wouldn't you, I guess?
Exactly. And I think what they've probably done is just got all the logistics specialists and gone hump, dump, and then go and do this event.
Yeah,
And it works. Yeah. And it works absolutely phenomenal. And we got halfway through the year. We wanted to raise some £900 because we didn't really know where it was going to go. And by the end of that event, the back end of last year, we were at I think it was just over £3,000 worth of donations, which is a phenomenal effort.
Yeah, it must have felt amazing.
Massively. You know, they close down the Champs-Elysees, you go up the cobble streets. If anybody ever has the opportunity to do something like that, it's a massively kind of a life-changing event.
Yeah, it's on the list.
We had a lot of interaction prior to the event from the local community. So I work for Lockheed Martin, which is kind of the biggest defence contractor on the south coast, and I said to them, I want to organise, prior to doing the London to Paris, I want to go and do a spin-a-thon. So my take, we used to do them in the military fairly often to raise money and awareness for kind of cancer charities, was that I wanted 3 individuals that we could nominate who would rotate to make sure that there was always one individual on a spin bike at any one time for a 24-hour period. And it was all organised, everything was good to go. And we said, right, come April in 2020, bearing in mind this date, come April, we'll go for it. It then obviously got delayed because of COVID and the pandemic and everything closed down. And then we got to a point where we thought, well, I've notified all these charities that I'm supporting you, and there's some things has to give. So I contacted the organizer down at Lockheed Martin. I said, I still want to do this spin-a-thon. How can you help me do this? And she said, in all honesty, Rusty, there's nothing we can do. Pandemic is the pandemic. Everything's shut down for security reasons. You can't do it. So we kind of have a stupid mentality in the military whereby if you say no, it doesn't mean no. It basically means try harder and find another way of doing what you need to do. So the result was basically me using my Wahoo Kickleball and just putting it on the front lawn of my house. So everything got re-rolled, and I basically said, we've gone from 3 riders and we're down to just me. And on this day, I'm still going to spin, and I'm going to sit out on the lawn for 24 hours. So we called in the RBL, so we had loads of balloons and bunting and tail and all of these kind of like key fobs and everything, rubbers and pens and paper, everything else was donated. And I honestly thought, I think it was at 9 o'clock in the morning, the sun came out and I was due to start at 10 o'clock. And you have all the typical cyclists on a Sunday morning going, oh, what are you doing? And I grabbed out the turbo train and we started doing the job. And it was quite daunting because everybody's like, I was just going for a bit of a spin on in the front garden because it's a nice day. Yeah. So we then dragged out some like signs and boards that were all laminated up saying, right, Rusty is signed himself up to do 24-hour spin-a-thon. They went, what are they doing it on? And then everybody was amazed that you obviously, if you're not a keen cyclist, people kind of look at your saddle and go, he's a bit of a keen, isn't he? Because it's quite aerodynamic and that's going to be fairly painful. So I brought out my bike and I said, right, well, I'm going to do 24 hours. But everybody started asking, well, how are you going to do 24 hours? You're all on your own. And I said, right, so here is the change in the game. It's that 24 hours in the saddle, or as near as damn it, which meant that any time off of the saddle had to be done at the back end of the challenge. Yeah. So, and there was only me, and you know, it was good weather for the day. And we started out very, very slow. And it was just me plodding on. We had Zwift in the background. We had all the walkers with the dogs going, what are you doing? It's Sunday morning. You should be in bed. You should be having a cup of tea. I was like, yeah, I know. I'm cycling for 24 hours. Here's all the RBL. Here's the background. And no word of a lie, within a matter of hours, everything had changed. And I don't know how, but the local community had got wind of it. The local schools in the area had got wind of it. The local shop owner had come to see me. And fast forward to mid-afternoon, we had families coming in with their kids when they'd gone to like an after-school event or a kiddies play event, or gone to do their football training and then come around to see me. We had the local police force that came round. I honestly thought I did something wrong, but no, it was the police constable who wanted to donate some change. We had the local council and the parish council that came round to see me. Ambulance crew came round to see me to see whether or not I needed any creams or any bandages if I was sore. The local busman, because our bus route goes straight round the front of our house, literally had a bus full of about 85 passengers, and he just decided to halt all of the traffic because it's only single traffic, and turned off the engine, politely walked out. Everybody put their head out and just said, jeered me on, and he just gave me a bit of change and then moved on. Absolutely great. We fast forward throughout the whole of the day, cash donations, people just wandering by, picking up a rubber or a key throwing and then putting things in. We were just, we were well over where we were expected to be by the mid-afternoon. And then come into the evening, it just didn't stop. We were doing constant live Facebook video streaming, just say, look, I'm still going, I'm still plodding on. Come and give me some Haribo, some cola bottles. It's the only thing that's going to keep you going.
When you get into the wee hours, nobody going to be about. It's going to get a bit lonely.
Exactly, and in all honesty, how I prepared myself for the evening was, right, okay, let's think about this. I'm probably going to be on my top between maybe about 11 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's really going to come see me, but we've got a local pub that's about 600 meters down the road, and we have people coming to see me at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I was probably more invested in just watching the end of the movie to keep me awake. But we have people who were, just stood next door to me drinking a pint of lager. Probably not the best motivation, if I'm honest, to keep me going. But we had the shopkeeper who ran a 24-hour shop, who said, right, well, I've closed the shop. It's a 24-hour shop, but I've closed it because I've come to give you Haribo and I've come to give you a fresh coffee. And if there's anything else you'd like, then come and tell me. And that was kind of the driver, where we knew that we kind of latched onto something within the community that was kind of driving people forward. And every opportunity was, the live stream was, right, if you don't know anything about bikes, let Rusty just bend your ear and we'll talk about bikes. If you don't want to talk about bikes, let's talk about day. Mental health is for everybody. It's not just for cyclists. If you want to talk about something, I'm not going in for 24 hours. Let's make the most of this, and I'll listen. And I often find it's quite easy, when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, you need to find something that enables them to break down their barriers and that kind of wall. Because certainly when I came back from a variety of conflict zones, I was adamant that I would only discuss certain things that played on my mind with those that I experienced it with. And in a way, it was good for me, but I felt that
it's quite cathartic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you think that, well, I don't really want to vent my problem to somebody else who's experienced the same thing, because I'm going to draw up the same memories. Whereas when I listen to some of the stories now, it's a case of, okay, well, we don't have to talk about that straight away. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about a hobby. Let's talk about something that drives you, that gives you that passion to move forward. And it worked really well. We had people from all ages, the people who wanted to start off cycling, and they were only 6 or 7 years old and they didn't know what bike they wanted, all the way through to, well, I had a 72-year-old man who'd only recently learned to cycle because he never knew how to cycle, and he wanted to know what kind of bike would fit him and what, you know, wouldn't give him his aches and pains. And it was really, really nice to show the community that, you know, our little bike shop we're not just there to make money. It's there to physically get people back on the bike. And
it's a great formula.
Yeah, it just works so well. So that kind of drive that we did midway through, and then doing the London to Paris, we got to the end of it with kind of this a huge rush of emotions and elation of, right, we've done everything. And we kind of sat in Paris overnight, and I was on the phone to the missus, and I said, right, we've done it. You know, we've done a good 2 years now of the pandemic. You know, the boom is probably over. We'll dip now. And my wife said, right, so what are we going to do next year? And I went, what do you mean? She says, well, the pandemic's pretty much on its heels now. I said, yes, but what else do you want me to do? I said, well, everything's kind of changed now in a hybrid working environment. This isn't going to go away. It's something that we need to live with. What's to say that we can't continue if there's a trade? I said, well, if I'm willing to help people if people still need support, but we've done a lot. I don't think people were interested in, you know, the Top Gear equivalent of a silly challenge, or to see what's available. And she said, well, what would you do? And I went, well, people cycle everywhere, you know. I had the opportunity to go down to the London Cycle Show last week, and in Ali Pali, and I got to see a massive inspiration of mine, Mark Beaumont, and absolutely top bloke. I explained the situation, and I said, look, this is where we've come from, this is where we are at the moment, and I've randomly signed myself up to do a stupid event. So for those that don't know, I am challenging myself to ride the Le Jog, which is Land's End to John O'Groats. I think on the west coast it says, or rather Google says, it's about 954 miles. I think it's a tiny bit further depending on the route. So I'm not really too sure. I don't know if you've ever done it before, Scott.
I know of it. It's weirdly, it's not something I've got planned because it's something that so many people have done, but you're doing it differently.
Exactly. So this is probably where the stupidity comment comes in, because my wife said, well, let's do a bit of Googling. Oh, everybody does this. You know, you can do from Land's End to John O'Groats to Landon. You can do the East Coast, West Coast. What's going to make it harder? And there are many organisations in the UK that run this event that, you know, have 4 or 5 star hotels, that have the whole kind of Royal British Legion lift and shift logistics team and support trucks. And we thought, well, the ability to get anywhere on a bike is so simple. It's a case of you rely on your own fitness and you just spin the crank. So what's to say that, because we get a lot of expensive bikes in there, and even now I can't really justify some of the bikes that come in to go, you know, spending like £3,000 or £4,000 to do an upgrade or a carbon bike is just beyond me. And with 2 little kids and a wife that seems to steal every penny that I've got, it's just not going anywhere. So I said, well, let's challenge ourselves. Let's do it on something cheap and cheerful. And the idea came about where she says, well, you know, we're in and out of London quite a lot. We always see loads of Brompton bikes. So what the opportunity would be was, let's contact Brompton directly. Let's see what the opportunity is to use a folding bike. And we contacted GCN, Brompton, and everybody started talking about this, going, this is a good, very random, very stupid event, but this could actually work. And for want of a better word, Brompton signed up to the event straight away. You know, they were like, this is going to be amazing. This is prime product. It's going to be really, really good. And unfortunately, you know, I say unfortunately now, is that in November, the back end of November last year, I was contacted again by Brompton, and they explained to me that they had a product launch that kind of was planned at the same time as what I was doing, so they wouldn't be able to market it. So we went back to square one, and we thought, right, have we exhausted all options? You know, the folding bike idea, it sounds really, really good, but we know that there, and we did the research because I think there was a Brompton that managed to do it in 7.5 days. And that was like non-stop, no sleep, literally jump off, go to the toilet, have a quick shower, jump on the bike and carry on pedaling. A phenomenal event. But it was more about, certainly for the veteran network, it was more about getting to that destination and achieving that goal. So we kind of flipped it on its head and said, well, you know, can the average guy, and this is me being quite generic, can the average guy or girl just walk into any bike shop and say, I want a Brompton? And I think we said that the cheapest Brompton that we could find online was something like £1,500-1,600, give or take. And we thought, well, the majority of the bikes that we have in the bike shop here are anywhere between, you know, the £100 bargain that you'll buy off the likes of eBay and Facebook, all the way up to people who've got lots of disposable income and they probably use their bike as a bit of a wall art instead of actually riding them.
Yeah,
everybody knows those kind of guys. So we thought, right, well, I probably see myself as quite a down to earth guy, and I thought, well, why can't I pick up a bike and just go anywhere? And we thought, well, why? Well, let's do the longest distance on the cheapest bike that we can find. And we kind of looked around and we thought, right, well, cheap bike, okay, potentially the likes of a local bike shop, private individual, something off eBay, but we want something that is well known, that it hopefully is new, that would get us to the destination. And we ended up going into Halfords. So we did the whole decathlon, we did the go outdoors, and we ended up in Halfords and started talking to the regional manager. We said, look, we've got this idea, crazy as it is, but we would like to take one of your bikes and I want to cycle 954 miles on a folding bike. And the cost of the bike is £280, all in, £280, albeit with a small bit of a staff discount. And it works, you know, it's
definitely
very
fits into the affordability range, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's, you know, for 90% of the people who work around London, all you need is a folding bike. So do you need and it's nothing against the likes of Brompton, because the Brompton has its appeal to everybody and the turns, but having a bike that you can simply just jump on, and if you're a keen cyclist, generally you have, you know, N+1 or more than one bike. So you have well, my wife does, it seems, but I don't.
Yeah.
So what, you know, one bike is your special bike that makes you feel, you know, that you are the next Cav, you are the next you know, Julien Alaphilippe, and the other bike is just the daily driver, the daily commuter. And I thought, well, I want to prove the point that we can get from point A to point B, no matter how long it is, in a given time, and it will make it by hook or crook. So we engaged with Halfords directly, and they said, okay, we'll grab you one. One of it just so happens that they were designing and producing their own brand of what they call it, top of the range, but their own brand of kind of intercity folding bike.
Yeah.
And a week later, we took delivery of this bike. So for the past 4-5 months, give or take, I have been doing a load of training on my road bike. So I have a kind of a Ridley Phoenix that I've been using for the past few years, if only to build up the muscles around the back, the shoulders and everything else. And we've kind of recently flipped over the training to this bike. And it's quite, and if you've ever ridden a folding bike and you're always accustomed to a commuter or a mountain bike, it's a very, very different feeling. Now, I did an interview on BFBS a couple of weeks ago, and they said, you know, what's it really like to ride a folding bike? And I went, well, I've never ridden a folding bike until probably about last month. And don't get me wrong, it's comfortable, but because there's the distance between how you hold the handlebars, which is obviously a flat handlebars, all the way down to the down tube to this small 16-inch wheel, is quite daunting, if I'm honest.
It's quite a different engagement, isn't it?
Yeah. So you kind of, I suppose, when you have the top tube that's between your legs and you are you're swinging the bike side to side, you can feel that stiffness Whereas because you've only got one tube that runs all the way down to the crank and then back up, you kind of feel that you're not necessarily out of the saddle, but you're kind of riding out of the saddle constantly. And you can pretty much feel every single bump in the road, and that's like a stone from a bit of gravel. So God forbid I run over a can of Coke or something, or a water bottle mid-fight. So we took delivery of the bike probably about a month and a half ago, and we've ripped out a couple of things. So the flat pedals have had to go, the seat is definitely had to go, but everything else is stock. So we originally said what we're going to do is we're going to get a trailer. So this event itself is going to be totally unsupported to prove the point that we can get from point A to point B. So the only thing that I've got is either a tent with me, depending on where I need to sleep, versus credit card, or nip into an Airbnb or a small hotel, whatever I can find.
Yeah.
The intent is to do, give or take, and I'll say this, is around 100 miles a day on the bike for 10 days straight. What I originally planned was we'd do Land's End, John O'Groats, 100 miles a day, and I'd have a trailer system that I could log on the back of it. So we'd have multiple compartments on this trailer where you could have one area for clothing, one area for turnaround kit, another one for medication, supplies, etc., etc. And we started doing the numbers because the bike itself is not the lightest. Let's put it that way. So you're thinking about 14k. Then you think me on a good day, I'm about 84, 85k. Then you think of all the supplies you've got to take, as well as the weight of the trailer. So we kind of backtracked really quickly and went, actually, say what, this is what we're going to need to do. We're going to buy a pannier rack, and then we're going to buy a load of bags. And like you see, all the general commuters, we're just going to do a bolt-on affair.
Yeah.
So that's what we've done. We've modified the bike ever so slightly for the pedals and for the seat, if only for comfort. The majority of the training is being done pretty much at the weekend, where I'll go for 40, 50 miles. Quite strange, if I'm honest. If you're a keen cyclist, you're going out on a Saturday or a Sunday morning, and you have everybody in your Oakleys and your aerodynamic kit. And I don't get me wrong, I wear the standard stuff, and then they kind of see me trundling along. So for those of you, yeah, exactly, going, what on earth is this guy doing? So the bike itself, if you've never ridden a rolling bike, it's only got 8 gears, and this is the pro and the con. The pro being, if anything goes physically wrong with the bike, should be relatively straightforward to fix. So cables, brake cables, gear cables is fine. Now the only thing that can't be guaranteed is the coupling that actually allows the bike to fold in half, because we have an agreement that I can pretty much wheel the bike in if need be. If I haven't got the parts, that they'll Halfords along the way somewhere will fix it, or a local bike shop will fix it.
Yeah.
And but if that coupling goes, then it's pretty much game over. So what I've kind of said is that I will get, by hook or crook, I'm going to get to the destination. If that means that I suddenly change the color of the bike midway through because something breaks, I don't really know. I mean, a lot of people have come up to us, including the local media, and said, "Look, are you actually going to get to the destination on time?" And I went, in all honesty, I don't know. It might be torrential rain. I think there is, when I looked at the stats, there's 954 miles, probably a tiny bit more depending on the route that it takes me. But it's like 28,500 feet worth of climbing, and it works out at just over 100 miles a day, which should be fine. But I'll probably be the first one to say that I'm fairly nervous about the journey that I've kind of set myself, having been kind of challenged by the wife to say, you find a challenge that even you would be dubious about undertaking.
Well, that's the idea of a challenge, isn't it?
And that's it. And I think what's made it more pertinent to me is that we haven't stipulated that it's just me. So it is an open door policy for anybody who cycles. The route takes us from Land's End to Oakhampton, to Bristol to Wolverhampton, Wolverhampton to Birmingham, Birmingham, all up to Preston to Edinburgh, Tain, Dewaney, Tongue, and then all the way back in. And I'll be doing live streams throughout the day. I will probably hit the virtual wall at some point. So I'll
You'll probably hit it most days.
Yeah, pretty much, and going, why on earth have I done this stupid event? But I suppose it's not only for those that are kind of suffered from mental health or having an ability to have that release, but we've given a kind of an open door policy to people. We said, look, if you suffered, if you know people from the Veteran Network, or even if you've never served in the military, but you suffer from PTSD, from anxiety, from depression, these are the times, and events like this is the time that is going to focus your mind and bring you out the other end, and that's what it did it for me. So the event, albeit it's been publicised for me doing the cycle, there are people that have contacted me from all over the UK and said, can I ride 60 miles with you? Yes, you can. Can I ride 2 days with you? Yes, you can. There isn't a no in this at all. So there might be days where I start off at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and there's nobody. Or there might be days when nothing happens and nobody comes to see me. Oh, my little boy. Hello. Yeah, so we're going to have a load of people from all over the UK who are coming in purely just to cycle maybe 10, 15, 20 miles with me. This year, we wanted to kind of touch upon, I suppose, more of a personal note on some of the stuff we've done previously. And we've all heard of the likes of Help for Heroes and the RBL, but we wanted to do something that was probably more personal to me from the mental health perspective. And we've nominated Combat Stress. Combat Stress is a serving and ex-serving veterans mental health organisation that helps signpost individuals to essential points of contact, whether or not you suffer from drug abuse, any form of addiction, anxiety, depression, PTSD, and that could be anything from simple from having somebody to talk to, all the way through to, right, we feel that, you know, we can signpost you there, that we've got consultants and physicians that can help support you get you through to the other end. And they are 75% funded by the British public, which is a phenomenal undertaking by the organisation, because in all honesty there are so many forces and NHS and any other charities at any one time trying to provide a service, not only for the veteran community but also for those at large. And we've probably all seen it, a lot of people who've struggled when they've kind of transitioned from the military, not found their feet, not found the words, or not had the right support levels when they've transitioned and felt that they've kind of left out. And I've certainly seen a lot of people, you know, sleeping rough for an evening, whether or not that's around the Reading area or central London, that they've kind of struggled to have that transition. And I was very much the same. I transitioned some 5 years ago. I had people next door to me who were who left the same time as me, and they literally left on a Friday and they started on a Monday, and they had their new job and everything was hunky-dory. And I just thought that was kind of that kind of grass is always greener. That I must probably be able to do this, and it just didn't happen for me. And I went through a period of probably about a good 3 months of unemployment, of panicking, thinking, well, have I made the right decision? And your things then starts to play on your mind, thinking, right, well, is it something I've done? Is it because I've experienced something that I haven't prepared myself enough? And this organisation, although it wasn't an organisation that helped me transition, it's something that's very, very close to my heart in terms of helping people do what they need to do. One of the biggest reasons, and I'll probably touch upon something quite personal here, is that I was a flight commander, probably a few years ago, and we all used to have a cleaner that used to come in. The cleaner had been working on the squadron, on a flying squadron in Lincoln for the best part of probably about 15, 20 years. And when you're in the Air Force or in the Army, but probably more so for the Air Force and the Navy, is that you're assigned a position for about a 2.5 year period. So after 2.5 years, 3 years, it's time for you to move on. It's time for you to develop your career and learn something different. And what we often find is that When we deploy as an individual, not necessarily a unit or a regiment, and we're bolted onto a squadron. So that was me. I was bolted on there, and I spent a good 2.5, 3 years in post. And just prior to me leaving, I was chatting away to this cleaner. Cleaner came in every single day, Johnny, and Johnny would clean the bins, clean my desk, and everything else. And a lot of pilots, because they're very, very busy, and the support staff would say, right, thank you very much, and just walk out. And I always made a point of making sure that everybody, whether or not you were military or not, or you were in the squadron, you were always made to feel welcome and appreciated for the work that they were doing, because
everyone's a cog in a big machine, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah. So it sounds silly, but you're a cleaner, you work for an operational squadron. If the squadron isn't clean, then we can't really get the aircraft out the door, and vice versa. So regardless if you're paid like £5,000 a year or if you paid £90,000 a year, respect is due where it is. And he was a veteran himself. He was, I think it was 17 years ex-Navy, and he went through a rough patch in terms of separation from his daughter and separation from his wife, which led to a divorce about 6 years ago, and he was still struggling with it. And he'd been kind of pinballed and given support by the local padres and local councillors, but nothing really hit the mark to allow him to kind of get that kind of release and that ability to then move on to somewhere else. And he came in one day, and this is the kind of thing that triggered my event, but made me think otherwise and how we deal with people. And he said, I just want to say thank you, Rusty, for what you've done. And I went, well, why? He said, well, because for 2.5 years, people come in and out, and I clean the rooms and clean the desks, and all I get is a thank you or excuse me, I need to get past. But you've been different, and you've wanted to chat, you've wanted to talk about my background, and it's helped me. But it's got to a point where I can't carry on. And I said, what do you mean? He says, my brother's a paramedic here, and he has an inordinate amount of medication, and I've made a decision that that's it for me. And I've got everything stashed at home, but I before I did the deed this evening, I wanted to clean your office one more time, and I wanted to speak to you and just to say thank you. And not necessarily, obviously, the alarm bell starts to go. You think, right, well, we're in this kind of position. What do you do? And I suppose there are a lot of people, and I would probably say that a lot of people would look at some of my military career and say that he's been quite unfortunate, whereas I feel quite privileged with some of the positions that I've been put in. And I suppose instead of the fight or flight moment of going, crap, let's find the padre, let's find security, let's deal with the situation, it was more of the ability to just listen to the individual, and find out the reasons why he was feeling that way. And this was about, I think it was probably about 9 o'clock in the morning when this happened. And I thought, right, work is work. Work will always be there. There will always be another email. There will always be somebody else to appease. We'll always have bosses and line managers. So I ushered everybody out of the ops planning room, and I locked the door. And he says, why are you locking the door? I says, because I'm not going to bother working for the rest of the day. And he went, why not? I said, well, you've told me that. You can't say something like that and take it back. And in all honesty, a conversation with you is far more entertaining than the emails that I've actually got to deal with anyway. He says, so what are we going to do? He says, well, I'm going to make a call to the desk. I'm not going to ring the padre, not going to ring the doctor. I'm going to ring one of my sergeants, and he's going to bring around a cup of tea and a biscuit. How's that feel? He went, I could go for a biscuit. I went, okay, cool. So we sent a runner out to the local naffy shop, who bought some chocolate hobnobs, which we're very pleased with. And the sergeant went and made a pot of tea. And I said, the only way we're getting out of this room is if we go and sit on the front lawn. And the front lawn had a bench where basically you had plane spotters, people who would sit at the end of the runway, photograph the aircraft. And I said, it's going to be loud, but we're going to sit here, and I'm not moving until such time as you're happy to go home. Simple as. And I spent I spent 7 hours and 20 minutes on the bench with him that day. And I lost count of how many times I had to go through a wee because the cups of tea just kept on going, which was the only indication of we were making progress. And we talked about everything. We talked anywhere from breaking down the initial barriers of, you know, how the relationship fell apart, his relationship with his daughter, and it made such a difference to see somebody go through. It was like somebody going through the 7 stages of grief all in the space of 7 hours, and the feeling that you get knowing that you've managed to help somebody through that is undescribable.
It changes your life.
It does, and it gives you a different perspective. You know, you see people arguing on like forecourts for petrol nowadays because they need a bit of diesel, or somebody scrounging over, oh, I need the last chicken fillet in the Tesco superstore. Well, you know, let's get some perspective here. We've all had a hard 2 years, but it's hit people harder, and people are unique for a reason, so they need to be catered for.
And you need the connections with people, which is exactly what you've done there. Just he's acknowledged that you've given him time, so he feels like it's more worthwhile. Yeah,
exactly. So we about a good 7 hours worth. We got to the end of it, and I said to him, right, can I go home, or are you going to do something stupid? He went, no, I think I'm going to go home. And I'm still in touch with Johnny, and Johnny will always thank me for what happened that day. But I say to him, you know, I'm thankful that you chose me to have that conversation with, and that's kind of what's changed my mentality. And having my own troubles when I transition, that's the kind of thing that I hark back to. And so Combat Stress are the organisations that signpost individuals. So it's not a room full of white coats that say, right, let's do the tick box affair. We think you're diagnosed with PTSD, go and see this individual. That's not what it's about. It's about the standard. Join an organisation. You know, it's not right. You know, a female can feel like this, but a male can't. No, that is equality. Is everybody has a different trigger, and that might be the case of, you know, somebody gets knocked over on their bicycle, all the way through to somebody's got to pick somebody else up on the side of the road after an RTA. So this organisation is fundamental in kind of broaching that gap and allowing people to kind of break down their barriers and get to a point where they're not necessarily happy to discuss, but they can find a different avenue in life. And so the organisation themselves, Combat Stress, are actually going to meet me on midway through the event. So on day 4, I'm hoping to be in Wolverhampton, and they've already said, look, we'll come with the standard treats, so chocolate digestives, hot coffee, tea, sugar, God knows what else. But also the morale booster for me is that people who have been given the necessary support by Combat Stress are going to be there. They're going to be there to see it. So for me, that's the big give back, is that I get to show, yes, I'm probably going to be hanging after 4 days worth, but I get to see the end result of people coming out of their shells and being who they should be, and finding a different life.
It's a lot of the things with stress, especially with men and mental health. It's becoming more and more prevalent that it's acceptable to talk. I mean, I can't speak personally, but I'm sure in the military, the stiff upper lip thing is waning more quickly, but it's had a bigger issue than wider society, I guess.
Yeah, I think somebody gave me a statistic, and they said that generally, not necessarily just men, but people who suffer from the likes of PTSD, we're only starting to see people who have served in Bosnia, who served in Northern Ireland, who served in the first Gulf War, who are now coming to the forefront. So it's about a 14-year average for most individuals for this to bubble away. And
that's a lot of time to harbour those thoughts, isn't it?
It is. You think that, you know, there are, and I'm sure there are some people in this world who will never experience it, you know, and I wouldn't want some of the experiences I've had wished on anybody else. But in a way, yes, it makes you appreciate the life that you've got, but I suppose the question that I always had was why me? Why was the person that I, why didn't I lose a leg? Why didn't I, and we've all had our fair share of accidents, but I don't think Combat Stress is that organisation that's allowed everybody else to be on a level playing a platform. So it's not about, well, I've lost a leg and I'm disabled. Well, I can't see. No. We're all treated as a unique individual, and to find something that is right for you to get where you need to be.
And the lovely thing about people like that and the organisations, that everyone who's been affected and supported by them, you always feel compelled to pass it forward.
Exactly.
Which again, it comes full circle.
Yeah.
It can only be a good thing, because you're just spreading good. You're saving one guy, he'll go on and do it to somebody else, or 10 or 30.
Yeah. And I think somebody said to me, if I wanted to invest time and effort in supporting a charity, am I the best individual to do it? Do I need to have come from a background where, I've experienced that? And the answer is no. You could be Joe Smith, who clocks in to be a primary school teacher at 9 o'clock in the morning and clocks out at 3, but you could be the best individual for somebody to talk to. And that's what is different about Combat Stress, is that you're not approached by men and women in white coats to pre-diagnose you. You're not rushed to find a solution to your problem and then pass you on to the next person down the line. It's that constant, it's a personal thing to get to know that individual that makes the difference.
Get it from lots of people will have first-hand experience to pass on, as opposed to a clinical side.
Yeah.
It's not a chemical imbalance, for instance. It's you've been through this.
Yeah.
And there's the relationship with the people. I mean, I guess you'll get connections with people who've been through similar things.
Yeah, and I think that you'll always have that. People certainly from Bosnia, Northern Ireland, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and we see. I've spoken to people. I was with a nurse, and the nurse was deployed at the same time as me to Iraq in 2006 and 2007, and she couldn't cope. She couldn't cope with the bangs that you hear in the middle of the night, and I thought it was strange. IDF, so a mortar comes into the compound, you put your head down, you put your body armor on, and it's kind of one of those, well, if you had a helicopter over your head over the noise goes away after a while, and you kind of become accustomed to this kind of routine. But it's very kind of a strange affair that you jump back onto, at the end of your deployment, you jump back on an aircraft, and within maybe 5 hours or so, you're on an aircraft, you're given fresh food, fresh water, which you've kind of craved because you haven't really had that treatment, and then you open the doors where you've been on that aircraft for 4 hours, and then you're back in London, or you're back in Oxford, where you come into this kind of a transit area where they go, right, you've done your deployment, and it's that kind of trigger mechanism of, right, well, you're going to be on guard 24/7. Here's your body armor, here's your rifle, here's your helmet. Be prepared for X, Y, Z. Versus, I'm straight off the plane. Oh, I'm just going to go and see my family now, and go and play with the dog and go.
It's supposed to be an instant disconnect, which doesn't work. Exactly. Human brain doesn't work in that way, does it?
Yeah, and I think it's taken, in my mind, it's taken the military a long time to see it. What we used to do, so what the military does now is that when you leave an operational area, you kind of have a pre-staging area. So you go to the likes of Cyprus for what they call decompression. So it's an opportunity for you to vent, to go for a drink, to talk about your experiences before you then go back and see your family. And that's the kind of linking that the military have got very, very good at. But you can't catch everyone. Everybody is different. Everybody, it takes time for people to digest what they've seen, what they've experienced, versus how they're going to deal with it. And that's where this certainly Combat Stress comes in. I've just been overwhelmed with not only the support that Combat Stress is given in terms of its kind of a platform to voice, but also getting to know the individual. It's not a numbers game, and it can never be a numbers game for somebody who suffers with mental health. It's, you know, helping one individual the right way, and signposting, giving them the treatment they need will only do dividends when they realise where they are, and then they'll want to pay it forward, like you said.
Which is where the funding comes in, because you need to be able to dedicate a non-finite amount of hours to these people.
Exactly, and that's
Resources.
I suppose that's when all the fundraising comes in. We have so my aim is to raise £3,000, but it's probably a drop in the ocean, if I'm honest, for what is needed. But it's, I suppose it's not only just for me, but it's the ability to do a charitable event for an organisation that's very close to my heart, but also help people along the way. So it's not about the end game. It's not about, you know, here's a check for £3,000 to the agency, job done. It's about the journey, that evolution of who am I going to wake up to? You know, who I'm going to get up on day 3 and I'm going to be in Bristol or Wolverhampton. Who's going to come and join me for a ride? What are they going to
the awareness of the existence of what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Exactly.
More people will see that. More people will get help through that because they know of its existence.
Exactly. Yeah. No, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, when are you starting?
So the pre-staging event is on the 16th of June.
Okay.
We're about 6-7 weeks away now. God, close. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pre-staging is on the 16th. Sorry, on the Friday, the 17th of June, the journey starts. The pain game starts. So I will aim to probably start around 7 o'clock in the morning. The reason why we've chosen June is because it's the longest and lightest days, which basically means I'm not going to get run over by any cars, but I've got enough time to try and get to this destination. We've got some custom-made jerseys that are coming in, as bright as anything. We'll like pennants and everything else labelled up. So I'm hopefully I'm not going to get run over, but we'll have all flashing lights and God knows what else wrapped around us, which would be good. We've done a load of nutritional advice from a company around our way called Try Life that have talked about protein intake, sugars, nutrients, water, what we need to keep the body going. Mark Beaumont, when I went down to the cycle show in London, I explained to him the situation, and before he gave me any information, he just laughed at me. He says, "How do you do a bike fit?" Yeah, he said, "How do you do a bike fit on a folding bike?" And I went, "Your guess is as good as mine because I don't really know how it's going to go."
Yeah, you'll probably change it 30 times in the first morning, slightly.
Exactly, and I think I'll have my tools with me to do minor adjustments. But I said, "Is there any advice?" And he said, "Eat, and eat." And we were looking at some statistics whereby, you know, in hot climate conditions, you should be averaging anywhere between 2,500 to 3,500 calories a day. Whereas,
more than that.
Yeah, the uptake is like 5,000 to 6,000. And he says that if ever you go past a shop and you only have half a bottle of water, you stop at the shop and you grab water because you don't know where the next one is going to be. So I think the only change to the plan that we're doing is that by midway through each day, I have to set a reminder on my phone that I need to ring the accommodation so I can gauge what time I'm going to ride.
Oh,
versus the food that I need to turn around the kit and then jump, because everybody said, "Oh, we'll give you breakfast free of charge." And there's a thought process in the back of my mind going, well, if I'm going to be in the saddle for like 12 to 15 hours a day, I don't think I've got time to have breakfast.
You'll need it from experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I mean, don't get me wrong. If anybody from where the accommodation or wherever I am, if you're looking at this now and you want to make me coffee or hot food at 4:30 in the morning, then crack on.
It's unbelievable how appreciated it is.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the accommodation guys for the B&Bs and the hostels said, like, we can give you cold food, and I went, that's fine. So I'll take anything and I'll pack it away with me, and then I'll try and find a Greggs or a sausage roll en route or something to keep me going. But the advice was not to worry about what you should or what you shouldn't eat. everything that you eat is probably going to give you that vital energy that you're going to need.
You're not going to get fat by eating too much.
Exactly. Yeah, with the amount of calories it's going to be burned, and it'll be a great opportunity for, I suppose, me to kind of have my me time. But what I'm really looking forward to is, you don't really know who you're going to be cycling with. So, and I've already been contacted by some woman who's in her 70s, and she says, like, I'm taking the train and I'm meeting you at Land's End, and I'm going to cycle 80 miles back to my house. So I'm going to do 80 miles with you on the first day. And I'm like, those are the highlights. Those are the times when I'm going to be cold, I'm going to be wet, I'm going to be miserable, I'm going to need a pickup, and somebody's going to be along with me for the ride, and that's what's going to give me that boost. Yeah, it's going to be painful. It's going to be awkward. Sore.
There's a few hills here or there. I know you won't enjoy one particular one, but you'll be with me.
But the problem is, everybody said that, and everybody's commented on a different hill.
Yeah,
so if it gets one person to look at life a bit differently, to have a different perspective on what they've got, then the job is done.
That's the thing. You want all the people to see what you're doing it, but you're not doing it for you. You're doing it for others.
Exactly, and that's the main thing.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for.
No, thank you.
Yeah, allowing me to speak to you for this amount of time.
That's all right. No, it's my pleasure.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed that, and agree, he's a insane human being who's doing something just fantastic. As mentioned, I'm going to leave all of the links in the description below, so you can follow Rusty on his journey. If you want to get in touch, if you want to help out in any way, do the same, get in touch with me. Better getting in touch with Rusty directly. Won't be the last you see of him. I'm going to be joining him for a day. It's going to be wonderful. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll bid you farewell, and I'll see you on the next one.